Alright, so this is going to be Mecha Design Guide 002, and I'm going to talk about designing the frames for Mecha with different kind of mobility types. That's a long way of saying, do they have legs, do they have wheels, tracks, and it'll make more sense as we go along here. So let's see, today is Friday. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. We ate a lot of food, and that was pretty. That was, yeah, pretty cool. Oh, my writing's a little bad. So a lot of the Mecha, there's a lot of different kinds of Mecha that you'll see with different mobility types or mobility systems. And the mobility systems will be things like, in our case with Mecha, it'll be legged, and then you'll have tracked, and tracked is going to be, that's going to be like your tanks and your infantry fighting vehicles, your APCs, so like this would be your track system here with all your road wheels. And of course your legs are going to be, do something really simple. So you have legs. You're going to have wheeled. That's another mobility system. I am missing some. Oh, ground vehicles, you're also going to have hover. Which hover can take a couple different forms. So you have the ones like, if you look at the military LCACs, LCAC, so LCAC, that stands for Landing Craft Air Cushion. And usually what it will be is you have the hole right here. You're going to have some big engines. You have these huge fans on the end. And that gives you propulsion or thrust. And then underneath you're going to see these bags, this big bag like this. Or not bag, but sorry. You'll see a flexible cushion underneath, and I have that term wrong. But essentially what this does is it you not only have thrust going out the aft end of or after the back end of the landing craft, but you also have thrust going down into the ground. And so what this flexible part here does is it takes all of that energy, or propulsion energy, or in this case I guess it would be ground effect energy, and it focuses it and contains it. So you get you focus it into a concentrated area. So basically you can cause your vehicle to hover and come up off the ground. The second type that we have would be, so let's say variant 1, variant 2. Second type would be the ones that we see in science fiction, where let's say we have the same hull, and then we just need the engines up top, so we eliminate the fan, and then you basically got We're going to make this look really crude. And then you basically just have, you know, thruster nozzles that, you know, you can, that are variable geometry, so you can turn them. And then they basically throw out thrust. And then this can just kind of hover, you know, a certain distance off of the ground. So let's see, leg tracked wheeled hover. Oh, and with the legged mobility system, so throw that here into the slow box. So leg mobility system, you can also have, what do you want to call them? Dual mobility or multi-mobility systems. So it'd be hybrids, composite. There's a lot of different words that you could use. Hybrid's probably the one that would be real, everybody would understand today. So you'll see these in Patlabor. So essentially what they'll look like is, let's say you have a wheel. We'll put a pattern here on the tire. So let's say you got a wheel here, and then, but that wheel is attached to, let's say, the leg of a mecha or robot, or, you know, what, there's, you can name your mecha whatever you want. I just say, I'll call them mecha just to be generic. But in science fiction, you have all sorts of different names. You have walkers, you have, in Appleseed, you have things like landmates, which are, those are power armor, so still qualify as mecha, because it is a mechanized machine. But yeah, so you could have a wheel like this. It could be attached to a leg. So if we did another view, you could have a wheel here, and then let's say it's attached here, and then you've got the, there's an actuator right here, and let's say you got a leg, the leg continues up this way, and then you just have this wheel here, which the mecha, if it wanted to, it could just roll along on that. Now that could be it could be a short little track, like on a tank. If you want to do something interesting, you could put hover under there, which you kind of see in a lot of transforming designs. So if you take the Valkyries from Macross, their feet, if you look at their feet, we'll go with the G1 models. This is very generic, but with Macross, they would have, didn't quite do that right, but hopefully this gets across the right idea. Sorry, I wasn't talking. So in Macross, what you have is, you have these thrusts, pardon me. So you have the feet, this would be the foot, this would be the leg. So leg mobility. And then essentially here, you've got the thrust from the engines coming out, which, see, they would look something like this. If you look at aircraft when they're coming, when they go into afterburner, you get this really cool pulsing look that comes off the engines. So you get this thrust coming out of these thrust nozzles, which are the feet. And so it'd be kind of like a combination of hover or thrusting, flight and leg mobility. So I guess we could put under hover, we could put flight. You know, these it'd be rocket engines or boosters or, you know, thrusters, depending on what you want to mount onto your mecha. So you got the mobility systems, and then you have a third aspect to consider, or third characteristic, is typically on mecha, you've got, actually I'm going to go back here. So this is our frame from the first one. I was coloring it in for the thumbnail. And with the frame, you're going to have your upper and your lower sections, right? So the upper is going to be what we call, on a tank, we would call it a tank or IFV. Let me try that again. On an armored fighting vehicle, an AFV, which is a generic term that just means all armored fighting vehicles, whether they're tanks, you know, infantry fighting vehicles, APCs. This would be called the turret. On a mecha, we call it the torso. You could call it the turret too if you wanted to, but just for the purposes of this example, we'll make a distinction. So for mecha, we'll say turret, and then for armored fighting vehicles, or traditionally what's known as mechs for mechanized, it'd be the turret. And then below would be, on a vehicle, it'd be the hull. So on our mecha, we could call it the hull and include the mobility system. I guess there really isn't a hull down here, but, you know, upper lower system, or parts, pieces, components. What's the cool thing about the English language is there's so many different words that you can use. That's probably true of any language, but so we're going to have the upper. Let's call it the upper section, or you could call it system if you want to, and then you have lower. Ooh, should get a different pen. This one's starting to bleed. Pardon me. So upper section would be like your turret. We're going to say it's going to be the turret / torso. Let's see, am I still in frame? I am. And the lower section is going to be the hull. Let's call it the hull, because on your tanks, you have tanks and armored fighting vehicles. You have the hull, and attached to that is the mobility system, which in our modern day would be tractor wheeled. And so on a mecha, you'd have the hull, which would be a lot smaller, and the legs would be attached to it. So let's make it simple. Let's call it a hull, which also makes it really traditional in how we talk about our armored vehicles. So there's several different kinds of mecha to decide what you want to design. And actually, I got some of the examples here that I'll show you. These are ones I drew up a while ago. And the Gen 1, Gen 2, ignore those. That was a different idea that I had. But so here you'd have the torso of a mecha, a robot, and then you'd have the tracked hull of an armored fighting vehicle. Now this could be a tank, depending on how much armor it got. It could be a reconnaissance vehicle. This thing could be, let's say it carries infantry, so it could be an infantry fighting vehicle, because it'd have lighter armor, so it wouldn't be able to be in a stand-up fight against tanks, or at least it wouldn't be looking for it to be in a stand-up fight against main battle tanks. And then down here, you've got a wheeled mobility system instead of the tracked system. So the wheeled mobility system, same thing. Is a heavy fighting vehicle, is a tank destroyer, tank hunter, or the Germans have the coolest name for tank hunter, tank destroyers, and Jaegers. So, yeah, the Germans definitely get that one. Now you can take the mobility system, which can either be tracked or wheeled, and then you come over here, and in these two examples, you've got leg mobility. So these are multi-leg, and these have 8 legs. So, spider tanks. Which a spider tank, the term is very generic. Now, which can mean it could have 4 legs, it could have 6 legs, it could have 8 legs. The 8-leg one, technically, that would be correct to call it a spider tank, but kind of like calling a carrier or submarine a boat when those are ships. It's the same thing with the term spider tank when you hear that. So it can apply to to both. So have fun. You can just have fun using that, even though they may not be a tank that you're actually looking at. So in this first example, we've got the leg mobility, and then we have a tank, traditional armored fighting vehicle turret. This could be a main battle tank turret. This could be a light tank, or for infantry today, they have a new AFV type vehicle type that is it's like mobile protective firepower. Essentially, it's a support vehicle. It's an modern version of an assault gun. So you take an artillery piece, you mount it onto a turret, and then if the infantry run into any bad guys, these things fire high explosive projectiles at them, or anti-personnel rounds, and just support the infantry and give the bad guys a bad day. The second example down here with the leg mobility is you have a mecha or robot torso mounted onto a traditional vehicle hull, here in this example. So yeah, you have these two different types. Kind of the way I like to think about it is you have traditional conventional vehicles like your tanks or your infantry fighting vehicles, and then you have your mecha, and each of them are going to have a hull. Oh, pardon me. Long day. Are going to have a hull, which is going to be the lower section, here and here, where the mobility system is attached. And then they're going to have an upper section, which is going to be either turret or torso. And if you want to call these a turret, you can call it a turret. You can call it, whatever name you come up with, you can call them that. Now over here, oh, cool, we can't see it. So over here, this is a quad type mecha, and it's got a robot torso mounted on it, and I put arms on that. Thought that'd be interesting. Here we've got a biped mecha, which has a robot torso attached, and you can, let's see, I didn't draw a picture of that. So another version you can do is you could have the biped like this, or the quad leg mecha, attached to a mecha or a robot hull, which again is very small. And you could take a tank turret or a armor fighting vehicle turret, and you can mount that in place of the robot torso. So there's a lot of interchangeable pieces that you can play around with, and you could, if you wanted to, you could attach wheels like we did, here. You could attach wheels to the legs, or in this case, I drew, a very simple tracked feet, because it's kind of an interesting idea. So these are kind of different ways of interchanging parts and getting a whole bunch of different type of mecha out of it. And one of the things I didn't go over yesterday, and I should have, is when you're drawing your frames and your actuator drives, the actuators are think of them as joints, or in a turret, you've got the turret ring. you know, for anything that's going to rotate or you know, like a shoulder, elbow, you know, your feet, the hands, turret rings. The mobility systems I just put in red, but and then for the frame or for the armor, I put that in blue. A different version of that. Where did I put that? I should have marked it. Another version I had. Oh, here we go. Yeah, this guy here. Can you see that? Cool. So in this case, I just did the frame as blue, and the armor pieces I attached are purple. This one's wrong, but I was, you know, that's what happens when you sketch. You sketch out ideas, and then you correct them as you go along. Pardon me. So the color coordination, it really helps you give just basically a color contrast, so you can quickly identify what you're looking at. So in this case, you know, this is a joint, or what I call actuator drives. This is, you know, detachable armor pieces, and then this is the frame. You know, you can make the frame yellow, or actually this would be the outer skin, that'd be blue. Sorry, the outer armor. And this is armor that's actually attached to the frame, which would be this. So you could color that yellow, you can make it tan, brown, or in this case, I think I was going gray. And it really helps to differentiate your different parts if you want to get that detailed. If you don't, and something that helps if you want to just quickly draw some of your nice. I love big pens. They're very modular. These are cool. Okay, so one of the things you can do is, like, you know, here, let's say, whoops, we'll just draw a very simple, some, you know, rectangular piece. It's just, I like to draw generic geometry on my Mecha when I'm designing them initially, just to get an idea of kind of the volume that the amount of space that they're going to take up. So, you know, you use I said shape, didn't I? Geometric forms, a 3D form. So, you know, this has volume and space in between it. And one of the things you could do if you don't want to do all the coloring, or, you know, if you're just in the field and you just have a pen, or, you know, in my case, for, you know, some situations, because it's moving around a lot, all I had were pens or pencils. And you can just take and, you know, just use some hatch lines right here, or, you know, if you can cross hatch it if you want to, like this. And then what I like to do is just darken in the lines where there'd actually be a shadow, like at the bottom, or, you know, the outside border, like this. It just gives you, you know, really nice look as you're drawing, and, you know, keeps everything simple. The other thing you can do is, I don't have a Megraph. Oh wait, yeah, I do. So if you have graphite, which is just what we call leads, it's not actually lead, thankfully, but you know, you could lay down some graphite and then either take a blender, which you go like this, yeah, it just kind of pulls it out. I was using some blue graphite with this earlier, or you can use a very old traditional method and just smear it with your finger. And this is a bit of harder graphite. I think this is like HB. But it gets softer graphite, so you can just, create shadows and smear and whatnot, which is really nice. So yeah, there's the different kind of mecha types that you can design. So, so essentially think of it as, I tend to go over things a lot, so I hope I'm not being confusing. So when you're kind of sketching out your concept, you're in the conceptual phase of your development. Think of, okay, I have for your mecha, I have the torso, I have the hull, which I'm going to say hull slash, mobility system, okay. And you can start, in your universe, you can start laying out how you want those, to look. The kind of different design elements you want to put into them. And, write those down, and then, or, if you don't want to write them down, just, start drawing, and then what I like to do is, after I decide what I'm going to design, sorry, hold on, we got to back up. So all the mecha types or mecha concepts that we were just looking at were, sometimes you have a tank hull with the tracks, or, just traditionally what we think of as a robot, a mecha. You also have the transforming designs, and, those are come under various names, and we'll have, I'm definitely planning on doing videos kind of diving deep into that. But so, they could be transforming, you can call them shifting, you can call them, I forget what they called them in Macross. It might have been variable fighter, I think, because I think they might have done a play off of like variable geometry. If you look at aircraft like the F-14 Tomcat or the B-1 Lancer / Bone, or for everybody over in Europe, you have the Typhoons, you had the Jaguars during the Cold War, and they had these variable swing wings. So you'd have, you have the wings out here, and then they could swing back, and it gave them a different profile in the air, depending on how fast they were moving, what kind of engagement they were in, if they were in a dogfight or not, and they could change that, which was really cool. So in Macross, you have all these transforming fighters based off the F-14 in the original series. And they would I think they called them like variable geometry, mecha or robots or Valkyries. That might not be true. I might be making that up, but that's another name you could use too. You could just, it could be variable geometry, so VG something, VGMs, variable geometry mecha. And you don't have to come up with complicated names either. During World War I, they just called all aircraft machines, because they didn't have a name for them. Everybody's pretty fascinated by these, these flying miracles, which we would look at today and just think, oh man, what a death trap. But yeah, you just, you call them machines. Again, like an Appleseed, their power armor, they called them landmates. So it was a man-machine Neuralink. You climb inside of these mecha, and then they would basically respond to your movements. They're pretty cool. It's based off of what they called a Waldo system. So a Waldo is what we today would call an exoframe. You'd have a frame around your arm, around your leg, around your body, and any movement you made, it would translate that into movement for the mecha. So In Appleseed, if you ever see him, you have the pilot who's in armor, in like a tight-fitting kind of hard suit, and they would have their own little hands that they would on the landmate, and the landmate had its own arms and legs, but the pilot, it kind of looked like they were kind of fitted to the inside of the power armor. I'm not quite explaining that quite right, but so whatever movements they made, the landmate would mimic. And then in Bubblegum Crisis, you had with the Night Sabers, trying to get my eraser warm so I can actually stretch it and use it. With the Night Sabers, they had hard suits, and the hard suits were basically like lightweight but very durable armor, kind of like a very very light power armor, but not really. Yeah, I guess they qualify as power armor. So some, here you'll see with the frame, going back to the frame that we did in the other video, I think that was 002. So what I did here is I was coloring the actuator drives, and we'll draw one here. This is the way I like to draw them. You guys you'll come up with your own methods or own designs. And essentially what I'll do, I'll draw that. I don't always use red, but this, for this, it's just red seemed cool. So what I'll do is I'll darken in the kind of the thin lines in the exterior parts of the actuator, and then I'll just put in a lighter coloring of red on the rest of that, and of course you come in here and darken it in. Or you can overlay it with a darker color, traditional black ink. Which is kind of nice, you can take one color, it's kind of a little bit lighter, purple, blue. I have a frame. Okay. Kind of figure out your layout, where your lines are at, and then you can finalize your lines. So that's really quick. That's it's very ugly. So it's nice and handy to do. Yeah, and so with the bipeds, let's move on to that. With the biped mecha, you can either have traditional humanoid legs that we recognize like our own, or you can have, we'll just draw the lower hull. Make this really simple. Keep forgetting to see if I'm in frame. I did that in one of the other videos. I felt bad because I was drawing out here, and I think you can only see part of it. Kind of reminds me of the movie Tora Tora Tora, which is it's the best movie about the attack on Pearl Harbor during World War II. And in that movie, there was a sequence they had where they were filming the USS Nevada, and they had this really complex, this is the 1970s, so CGI didn't exist. Special effects were completely practical. Digital effects were really, really limited. I think Westworld had what's considered one of the first special effects, and it's just a digitized hand that was rotating. But with Tor Tor Tora, everything was practical. So you had to, if you had a sequence like in the movie where I'm trying to figure out the legs here. Okay, hold on. So we know the actuator drive is going to be here, or drives will be here and here, and then we're just going to have the leg come back. Yeah. Okay, so that'll. Oh, you know what? No, that'll look weird. Okay, we'll do this. So, in the movie, they had they built all these scale models of, or scale versions of the battleships, and I think if I remember right, they were going to use perspective to get the battleships were technically super dreadnoughts, which were from the World War One era, or the dreadnought era of what we would know as all big gun battleships, but they were known as super dreadnoughts at their kind of pinnacle version that they came up with at the end of or during World War One, and a lot of them have been modernized because you just don't dump a ship or dump equipment just because it's 20, 30 years old. A lot of weapons platforms and support and logistics platforms, or machines, are still very, very viable, still useful. You just have a lot of industrialists and a lot of people in the military-industrial complex and in the government who want to make a lot of money, and so they'll say, well, this is old and we need to get rid of it. And which usually ends up in our men and women in the military losing very, very good pieces of equipment. Sometimes it's valid, but you get people trying to justify getting rid of things, and it's like, no, they still work. And you want a good example, you look at the B-52. I kind of messed this up. Oh well, darn it. I'll just have to play around with the parts. Sorry, guys. I got distracted talking about Nevada. So during the filming of the movie, they had these scale models, or sorry, scale versions of the super dreadnoughts. And with Nevada, there was a scene in there where she gets underway, and she was the only capital ship in the harbor that day to actually get underway. And she was fortunate because she had, I think some of her boilers were powered up, because you just, unlike World War warships and video games, you can't just, or a lot of sci-fi, you can't just turn a ship on and then start moving. Especially ships back then, they had a huge amount of prep time. They had to energize the propulsion systems, which back then was building up a lot of steam, and then they'd have steam creating energy that they could use to propel the ship forward. And it's going to be really ugly. I guess we're going this direction. In order for me to get this out, I'd have to rotate that actuator, but I drew it this way, so we're just going to do this for now, because this is just supposed to be an example of this canted leg. So in the shot, and you actually see it, it's really brief, but Nevada's supposed to sail by, and when she sails by, they have all these explosions going off. They've got coordination with all of the stunt coordinator, or the stunt coordinators. All of the gentlemen men and women running the action sequences of aircraft diving on this ship, and of all the the cast, or all of these extras who were playing the parts of sailors, and you got anti-aircraft guns going off, you've got damage control teams running around, you got explosions going off, and they're all having to do this practically, right? So you got to get this right. You can't just it's not like today where that didn't work out, we can fix it in post. There was no such thing really back then. So what was supposed to happen was you were supposed to have Nevada sail by, have all the explosions and everything go off, and it's supposed to be this just this epic shot of this this heroic event, which it was, of the again the only capital ship, the only super dreadnought or battleship to get underway, and they forgot to turn the cameras on. So, and when they realized what was going on, with all of the coordination and everyone else getting everything right, they forgot to turn the cameras on, or I think there was the lens covers were on. It was something like it was this simple little thing. And when they realized it, they turned the cameras on, or they ripped the lens covers off. I forget what it was, one of those two. And you only catch like the fantail or the aft end of the ship. Aft is short for after, which is the back end of the ship. As she's sailing by, and there's some explosions going off, and you got anti-aircraft gunners, firing off their guns, and yeah, they lost that. They lost most of that shot, which was a real bummer. And I don't know why I started telling that story. Something about it's a cool story. But yeah, Tora is if you've never seen it, I think you can find the behind the scenes of making of on YouTube, and the making of that movie is almost as epic as the movie itself. So I had some reason I was telling that story about the practical model of the Nevada. I'll go back and listen to this and realize what it was. I'll bring it up again. Try and finish that story. See, this is why I should make notes. So we've got the hull here, and I didn't draw any feet on this. Okay, let's draw some feet. Yeah, I really should draw some different kind of feet, but this is really simple, very practical. And again, when you're doing your conceptual, or when you're coming up with conceptual designs, which your conceptual designs are basically ideas, right? It's like, oh, this would be cool as a mecha, or what if I added this part, or I had that. One of the things that you can do in the beginning kind of help, it'll help you to move things along, and it'll help with feeling like you've got momentum, right? Like you're making progress in the designs, is just real simple shapes, right? I mean, you don't even have to do these actuators like this. I only do these because I know, where those should be or approximately where they should be in the designs. This is really wonky, but yeah, you can, you don't even have to draw these. You can do something like this. This is another joint or actuator type that you'll see a lot of in mecha design. And that's not going to be a good view. Let's do that again. Yeah, eventually we'll do editing. Okay, I realize I got to draw. I have to draw bigger. I love things that are miniature. I'm part Japanese, and Japanese love things that are miniature. But I love miniature things in general. I'm a war gamer, and I love building model kits and stuff like that. I haven't been able to do it in a long time, but yeah, miniature things are just really cool. And in filming, check out something called tilt filter. Tilt filters are cool because they'll film a real scene, and then oftentimes they'll speed up the frame rate. And when you look at it, tilt filter makes everything look really, really sharp. And so you'll be filming, like, say, downtown Tokyo, or a scene, in a river somewhere, and everything looks miniature. People moving around, the boats, the cars. So yeah, tilt filter is pretty cool. Check that out. So you could do, if you wanted to, you could just do something like this, where you're like, this is what my joints look like for my mecha. This is how they, how everything turns. So, or if you don't have those figured out, you could just, draw this, draw the upper leg, and then draw the lower leg. You can keep it as simple as you like. You could just, hey, this connects here. And anything that'll help you just to, when you're conceptualizing. Because one of the things I run into, and is anybody eventually that'll be following this channel, or people who are following it now, sorry, tired, is I want to get a whole bunch of videos out, and I got caught up in all the details about how I wanted to name things and how I wanted to organize everything. And I got so laser focused on that, I wasn't filming the videos. So I am attempting to do better. So same thing with mecha design. If you don't know all these little details, don't worry about them. Just draw what, get your concepts down on the page, figure out what you can figure out all the other details later. And, as you're drawing, if you get different ideas, plop them down, or, draw them. So my whole original point of drawing this, getting back to that, is this is what we call canted leg. You'll hear them referred to, so canted, which would be C-A-N. So canted. You hear this applied to, legs on jet aircraft. If you guys ever, there's an old action movie called Stealth, and in that one it's kind of cool because the trying to be good about we'll just draw it in here. So traditionally, you have your aircraft, right? I apologize. My allergies have got me, and so my nose is a little stuffy. Oops. So you got your aircraft. Traditionally, your wings go here. They kind of, let's make this a delta, kind of a very short delta wing. Wings are like this. Canted wing would be something that would come up like here, right? Maybe they would be inverted from what we traditionally think of as wings. And Stealth was kind of cool because it was a variable geometry wing, but it was canted, so it would actually swing forward. Whereas if you look on the F-14, those wings would swing back. Which that was a great fighter. It was stupid they got rid of it. Dumb reasons they got rid of it. It was still viable. They had the Super Tomcat and the D, but they also had what they called tentatively the F-21, and it was going to become what the F-15EX has become, and the current Block 70 something F-16 Vipers. So there's a lot of people who say, oh, it's too complicated, we couldn't keep it in service, blah, 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 blah. Again, B-52, still in service, is going to continue to be in service. And by the time they retire that aircraft, it'll be probably around a century old or getting close to that. So yeah, don't. It's there's no reason to get rid of all your older equipment. There was nothing to match the F-14 at the time, and it's still a good platform. You just have a lot of greedy people who weren't in the military or were politicians, and they wanted to get rid of it. Much to the chagrin of the rest of us who were like, hey, that still works. And they're like, no, it doesn't. So, you know, the great thing about art is we can create things that are inspired by, you know, our favorite machines, which when I get to my transforming designs, you'll see that. A lot of my stuff is inspired by aircraft, tanks, a lot of things I really, really love. The F-14 was really cool because if you look at it from the front, her fuselage would kind of cant upwards, right? And her wings kind of come down. She looked like an apex predator, or you know, a raptor, which is a bird of prey. And it is a very cool fighter. The intakes were also canted, and in Macross the Valkyries are heavily based off of it. They're essentially transforming F-14, and you know, I want to take all the aircraft and the vehicles and stuff like that I can, and hopefully translate them into what I'm built, you know, the universe that I'm building right now. So okay, so back to designing. So yeah, these are canted legs here. And you know what we understand is like humanoid legs. And with your so when you're designing your mecha and you're starting out, you know, let's turn the page here. The frame will help you figure out exactly where everything is going on your mecha, right? Especially when you have an action scene, or you just have a scene of, say, we've got, you know, again, you can be like really generic with your drawing, but let's say we've got a mecha. We have a mecha kneeling. Yeah, see, this is where you can just be very generic in how you're drawing it, you know, and you can figure out the details afterwards. But he's kind of, I think I made him a little too short. So you know, now again in my design, the torso is split up into a tri-segment or triple segment, so 3 segments, and that's just the way I design because I want my mecha to have very human range of motion. So, you know, this is why I split mine up into 3 parts. You don't have to do that. You can use you know, one of the traditional mecha designs is basically a large block like this, and you know, you can build in some flexibility into it if you want, or you don't have to. This kind of design is generally, you'll see a lot of this like in BattleTech. Macross used a lot of it. Gundam uses it. And these are usually, with the exception of Gundam and Macross, these are usually what are used for, you know, what we call walking tanks. So that kind of mecha concept is like BattleTech. These are, in general, not quick. Although Battletech does have its fast mecha. These are usually like somebody decided they wanted a tank or infantry fighting vehicle, and they wanted to walk upright and basically just go forth and destroy things. I think Star Wars, the AT-ATs, you could probably argue are walking tanks. They're not very quick. They're pretty basic and functional. You know, they're very straightforward in their purpose. So, oh yeah, I didn't. Oh, well, you know what? Well, what would they be doing? Oh, you know what? Here, we'll have the arm down, have the arm up, and we'll have that. Let's see, they're holding their rifle. Yeah, they'll have their rifle up, and let's put some optics on here. We'll have the barrel over here. Maybe it's a laser rangefinder barrel reference system. And we'll have the stock here. Oh, I guess the wrist would be turned that way. Trigger out here. And then because it's a mecha, we have drum magazine. Because actually there's probably some armorers going, that's not the way you do that. It's like, you're probably right. And then just because, you know, somebody probably said they need to have it, they have a hand grip right here. That is ridiculous looking. Okay, anyways. But it's probably got a lot of boom. You just blow things up. And then over here, let's say they're standing, or standing. They're kneeling. That's why we drew this. They're kneeling next to some rubble, and so we could have, like, say, you know, perspective comes out this way, and then maybe they're. Can you do that? Well, they're mecha. Of course they can do that. And then we'll say they're maybe, you know, resting their hand, you know, here. So let's do that. That's very oversized, but, you know, it'll work. And then, of course, we'll have the head here. Must have the ears, bunny ears, cat ears, stags, whatever your favorite animal is. And oh my gosh, those legs are not long enough. There we go. So I guess that's not the frame. That's not really a frame, is it? That's more just kind of finding out where the body's supposed to be. So this works, though. This is just an example of, like, laying down geometric shapes and to get a basic idea where everything's going to be. So let's, you know, when you're laying out a picture or, you know, or whatnot. Oh, that should probably be a lot more rubble. I'll put like a torn up girder. Yeah. Oh. We'll put these. This is probably a guy in power armor or hard suit, because otherwise these would be really, really gigantic rivets. But who knows? Maybe in the future they're doing that. So let's make this into a frame so it actually illustrates what I was talking about before. Let's say you got the leg here. Okay, so we got the thigh up here. We'll just draw actuator. Got a rectangle. And then we'll draw the knee. And then we'll, ooh, yeah, this is off, I apologize. So, and down here will be the foot, but, so you have a frame. So let's say this is what the internal frame of your mecha looks like. And then, you'd have your armor pieces that you would essentially attach to this. So, let's see, since we know what that looks like, we'll draw this looking down at it. Oh, here. Well, let's do this. So the upper part will have that, and the lower part we'll just say is divided by this little line here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we have the frame, and then we want to attach piece armor. The armor, the mecha's skin to it, essentially. And you don't have to cover the entire thing. You can, let's say this is like really, really straightforward, and you're like, my mecha is just going to be bulky. This thing is a walking tower of doom, and I just want to have this thing, armored as much as possible. So you know that when you draw this, this is the volume of space it's going to take up. Now, eventually, what's nice about this is for the design phase, when you're trying to figure out what your mecha is going to look like. What's nice about this design process is that once you know this, you won't have to draw this frame anymore. In fact, at some point, you'll be doing this where it's like, here's the torso, here are the hips, here's my leg, here's my other leg, kind of approximately where, let's say you're doing a walking tank. And then my arms are out because the guns are, they don't have hands, they just have guns for arms. And then, the head's here. So eventually you do that, and then, okay, the leg's about this big. This is approximately the shape that it should be. I have big stompy feet, which makes infantry run in dread of my gigantic machine. Or realistically, everybody shoots at it with an ungodly amount of firepower, and these guys start praying. Suddenly nobody's an atheist. So yeah, you can do this, and then the other thing is, don't be afraid to draw over the lines either, and go, okay, I don't like the shape of this, so I'm gonna kind of carve in here. I like this. You can, it's kind of like, carving, essentially, or sculpting. It's kind of like if any of you are digital artists, it'd be like if you're using ZBrush, where you can just kind of mold and, shape and twist and your different shapes. And eventually, you're just sculpting, a shape, a form, 3D form out of that. And, you get some interesting designs, because let's say you stick with this is supposed to be circular actuator drive, right? It's right here. See, this is cool because now you have this, all this, you know, this space out here, and you have this actuator drive that's not the same size, so it gives you this like variance and kind of like really cool, you know, design distinction, I guess, if you want to call it that. You know, and it, you start developing your own, what do you want to call it, as a mecha designer? It's your own personal statement. It's kind of like your, trying to think of some technical terms. It's like your DNA being put into the mecha design itself. So yeah, that, you know, that's basically what the frame will do. And then, you know, you can start doing stuff like, well, okay, on the outside of the leg, I want to make sure I have these, you know, I have these boxes attached outside. Maybe they hold magazines, maybe it's spare parts. Could be armor, you know, it could be sensors. You know, and you just decide, well, you know, I'm going to draw these here because these are all supposed to be, you know, attached to the side, you know, of my mecha. Yeah, and that becomes fun. And it also, this will also help. You kind of use the same building out or attachment process. Let's take the arm, like a, actually, you know, I should pull the other example back out. Oh, there's a tank up in the street. Oh yeah, this will come about when we talk about spider tanks. These are some leg designs I was working on, and I gotta find it again. Yeah, so it's like this armor piece right here. Oops, not a frame. Sorry. It's like this armor piece here, this shoulder piece, or this hip armor. You can do the same thing. So say, you know, it's your arm on your hero robot, or, you know, just general purpose robot, right? Let's say that this is, this is your upper arm, okay? Let's say it's kind of attached like this. This is the other thing you'll start doing too, is as you're designing, you'll just kind of get lost in the details, which is a lot of fun, you know. Again, have fun, you know. It's easy to get frustrated. I mean, we all do. Don't feel alone. I've been trying to get better about whenever I get an artist block, which is what happened to me this last couple of days. I had intended on getting a lot of videos out, which I'm going to do. I'm not giving up. You know, got knocked down, going to get back up and get back to it. You know, get at it. And what I'm going to do from now on, my artist block, is I'm just going to, my other art discipline I love is writing. I am not a writer in any kind of form like that, but I just like writing stories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to world build. I'm going to write about my characters. I'm going to write about, you know, different subjects, you know, maybe theories and stuff like that. But, you know, kind of take a break, and then you can come back and you go, oh, wait a minute, this is what I need to do. So, okay, so let's say this is back to the armor. So this is your mecha's arm, right? Got kind of part of the frame exposed here. We've got the armor skin, or intrinsic plate, armor of your mecha. Say it's like mecha character, and then you want to take, let's say, okay, so we're going to put some more armor skin on the arm right there, and then you're like, okay, I want to put additional armor on top of this arm because I want these important parts, this important part protected, right? So you know that you have this amount of space here, right? So what you can do, let's say, so this will be alpha 1. And so one version you can use, let's say you decide, well, you know what, it's kind of, everybody uses this, it's really simple, it's direct. I shouldn't say everybody uses this, but you know, this is kind of an armor piece that you see, right? Over the shoulder. It's like, okay, this is kind of cool. You know, this would work. Let's say we're just going to put some additional armor plates, some layered armor, you know, that'll move with the arm. And then the other one is, let's say you're more of kind of the European type of armor, and you want something that's more like a pauldron. Pauldron? I apologize if I have the terminology off. And you're more of, well, I like kind of more armor, you know, that comes off the shoulder and, you know, really bulks that shoulder out. And I'm just going to add additional, you know, additional plates onto the, you know, onto the armor piece. So, and so here we'll do this. So this would cover our actuator drive or joint, whatever you want to call it. You know, whatever you decide to call it. I call them actuator drives because an actuator helps to create motion or acts as a joint. And then the drive part's just more because that's what it actually does. It drives, you know, movement. So, and it just sounds, it's always sounded cool to me as a kid. So I've always just kept it. And then our other actuator drive would be right here. So this is kind of a way, this is if you're looking, the mecha's in front of you and you're looking at it. So this is one way that, you know, as you're building your mecha, you can figure out what the volume is, where everything is, you know, where everything approximately is at. And then you can start designing everything around them. And that's, you know, that's where this frame helps. Because like in life drawing, you know, like I was talking about before, you know, it helps you to figure out poses, body language. In life drawing, you do the same thing. You have these, you know, you have this, there's like this, pardon me, I gotta get the ink flowing. You have these lines that you'll use for your characters, you know, depending on what they're doing. Sorry for that weird cut. So yeah, so the lines that you draw for human characters, you know, it's kind of the same. You have this flow and this you know, this rhythm, and just you can use that same principle for Mecha, you know. So this kind of I guess it's coming that way. Yeah, and that definitely helps. And I'll be doing more videos on kind of how to use the frames and whatnot as I, if there's more things that I come across. Because I hope that some of this made sense. Still learning how to do all this with tutorials, which they're really interesting, because you never really quite know where to start or where to go with them. But I'm just gonna keep going, because I want to help people be able to design their own stuff. And some of the other videos coming up are going to be definitely going to start the one on starships. So there should be, I plan on recording some of those tomorrow, I think. And then definitely Sunday, and I have some days coming up here coming off. Some days off coming up. Can't talk. And so, ships will be fun. So, especially when we get to the transforming Mecha ships, that'll be a lot of fun. But, I hope some of this helps, and I'm going to go back and watch what I recorded and then see what I can add to it or clarify in future videos. So, I hope everyone's having a good day, and try some of this out. Develop a frame, attach some armor to it, and pencil, pen, whatever you want to use, digital, and just design and create and change and modify things, and some more videos coming up. So, all right, everybody, take care, and have fun designing Mecha. Sorry. All right, take care.